the liver and the gallbladder really affect your brain.
Mm-hmm.
They affect your emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're not eliminating toxin out of the body and it's building up, right, it's staying in. And you have multiple ways of detoxing because your body was created in such a way that it's a big filter. And you've got to work to get this junk out of your filters, right?
Yeah.
So that you can really breathe. So your body can breathe. So your mind can breathe. And so you can think clearly and not be reactionary. But you want to be responsive. And responsive is like being responsible.
Hello and welcome to the Wellness Trinity podcast, where we interview top holistic experts and bring you natural solutions for modern day wellness. Let's get started with your host, Dr. Jacqueline.
Hi, welcome. Thank you for joining the Wellness Trinity podcast. I'm Dr. Jacqueline from thewellnesstrinity.com, where we provide natural solutions for modern day wellness. Today, we're going to discuss breaking the code of unhappiness with Perry Santoloci. Just a little disclaimer before we get started, what we discuss in this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. What you do with the information is to be used at your discretion, as the recommendations are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. So I met Perry through E3 Live, and actually found out about E3 Live through Hippocrates Health Institute. The owner, Dr. Brian Clement, was ranting and raving about E3 Live, and I knew there was something about it because I know anything that Brian Clement gets into is definitely going to be top notch. So I'm excited to have him here. He is he's a Whole Foods chef and business consultant. He was formerly the president and chef of LBC Cafeteria Service. He provided hospitality and food services for Best Foods Baking Group, CPC International, Financial Northeastern Securities Inc., Hallmark Capital Management Inc., Norton Inc., Sybase Inc., and Thomas Inc. After being in the food service and hospitality industry, Perry began the Voice of Health radio program, which focused on physical, spiritual, and relational health. The program aired in the metropolitan area in New York. His love for healthy foods led him to discover a new startup company called E3 Live. Perry spent nearly 20 years marketing and distributing E3 Live's Aqua Botanical product line. Today, Perry is E3 Live's Chief Education Officer. He oversees the company's education, organizational development, and marketing operations. Perry is an inspirational leader with a futuristic vision that reveals the need for continual change. He persuades others to alter the status quo in response to a most urgent challenge of worldwide pandemic, failing health. Perry is preparing others to serve a world filled with ever-increasing health problems that need holistic solutions. Perry is now spearheading a major strategic shift amid COVID-19, where employee and client relationships are pure, mineral-rich food products. New technology and e-commerce will be E3 Live's driving force into the future. So Perry, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
So like I said, it is a huge honor to have you here. And I don't say that lightly. I think the world about E3 Live as a foundational food is what I've really come to brand it for myself, actually, because after doing so much research, I I just can't help but feel like this needs to be a staple in people's diet. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. I've been drinking it myself for 20 years, and my first experience with it is it was really an amazing thing. I was planning on going to the lake. I had heard that this algae grew in Klamath Lake in Oregon, and I wanted to go and check it out. And at the time, I was working with Dr. Gary Knoll in New York, and he always focused on green foods. And I wanted to find the most potent, the most effective green foods on the market. And I heard about this algae that grew in Klamath Falls, and I got excited about it and was going to make this trip. And then just before I made the trip, a friend of mine had some of this algae in a liquid form in their refrigerator. And I drank about a half a bottle with my wife. And it was, well, one of the greatest experiences with the food I ever had.
Yeah. I mean, it's like the word that comes to mind is electrifying. I mean, you literally drink it and it just feels like your whole body is really alive, like the name of it. It's so powerful. And so, can you give us a little bit of background on the company?
Sure. The company is founded by Michael Saber and Tamara Campbell. Michael got interested in the algae as a result of a relative of his family that introduced him to the algae. And at the time, Michael was very, very much involved in the raw food movement in the early days with Ann Wigmore, which is the wheatgrass lady who cured herself of a terminal cancer using raw and living foods, focusing on sprouts and wheatgrass. And Michael had done some studying, had done some work with her, and helped his own life through it. And when he was introduced to this algae, he said, I wonder if there's a way that we could bring it to market in a more superior way. And that would be in a fresh, frozen capacity. And so he met Tamara here in Oregon, where Tamara had been harvesting and distributing the product in the early days in a powdered form. And Michael proposed an opportunity, say, let's try this. Let's try to bring it to market in a fresh frozen way. And that's really how E3 Live was born.
So what is the benefit of it being fresh and frozen versus powdered?
Well, it's just like the difference between a fresh juice and a dried apple. I mean, if you had a glass of fresh apple juice that you just squeezed versus something that was dried, you would have to rehydrate it. Your body would need to have the liquids in order to make the food itself work more effectively. When we juice, and I'm sure that you've juiced in your life, if you leave juice on the counter for a short period of time, you'll notice that there's a separation that takes place. The pigment usually rises to the top of whatever it is, whether it's carrots or apple or greens, and then there's a water-like substance at the bottom, which I call the living water. And usually with powders, that is what's disposed of, or it's evaporated, or it's heated and processed, and that's what we lose. We lose the actual delivery system that our cells are really looking for in delivery. So now you have to rehydrate, you have to put it in water, and then you have to wonder whether or not the water of the molecules of the water are going to be effective in helping you to deliver those nutrients to your cells and to your body to be effective.
Yeah. So, okay, so this is coming from a lake in Klamath in Oregon. And so what's so special about that lake? Why does it have this algae growing?
Well, this is an amazing thing. And we know this because in the beginning, in the 1970s, early 1970s, late 60s. I don't have an exact date, but NASA was the first to come on the scene and look at the algae as really a food that could be grown in a space station. They were looking for viable food that could be grown in space, that would provide all of the nutrients that were necessary for life, which in effect, the E3 Live, or what's called AFA, Aphanizomenon flossa, which is the clinical name for the algae. That was the big discovery of NASA. And the one thing that NASA was really interested in doing is really, in effect, transplanting it and being able to use it in space. And the mission, if you will, failed. And it failed because the natural ecosystem of the lake, of the 300 days of sunlight, the 30 feet of volcanic ash, which, by the way, was sediment from a volcanic eruption that took place some centuries ago of Mount Mazama, which formed many of the lakes and craters that we have here. In fact, we're only about an hour away from Crater Lake, which is one of the most beautiful sights you could ever imagine. I remember the first time that I was privileged to view Crater Lake, and for the audience, it would be really worthwhile to just look at some of the pictures online of Crater Lake, especially in the wintertime, where you have this aqua blue crater in the midst of all of this snow. And it's epic. I just have to tell you, it's epic. But the natural resources and the ecosystem and the fact of the clean air and the clean water and all of the different mineral springs that flow into Klamath Lake, this is the reason why the algae grows so plentiful. And it's just so high in so many minerals. And also, it's one of the only foods that contains really high amounts of B12.
Yeah, I noticed that when I was looking at the bottle. I was like, wow, this has a lot of B12. I used to take all kinds of B vitamins, and I was doing royal jelly for a minute, and then I stopped taking all that stuff, and then I started taking E3 Live, and then just realized it was in the food I was already eating. So that's kind of nice that I was like, well, I don't need my supplement anymore. I have it in this.
Yes.
So I think that's, for vegans, this is a great substitution for B12, huh?
Excellent, excellent. And the chlorophyll content as well is which is tremendous. Well, let's look at something like wheatgrass, which is a great food, and it has its place and it has its perfect properties, but the chlorophyll content is approximately 135 milligrams of chlorophyll in wheatgrass, whereas it's up to 300 milligrams in the E3 Live.
Wow.
And that's significantly much more.
Yeah, that's more than double. I never really think about chlorophyll too much in there because it's like a it's bluish more than green, I think.
Well, it depends on the time of year. Sometimes the algae could even seem a little bit brown. And the reason for that is the carotenoids that are found in it as well. So when you're looking at E3 Live, and just for the listeners and those who even purchase from us, this is not standardized. This is real agriculture. I mean, we actually harvest this and we bottle it. Of course, we test it and filter it, and it's triple tested for microbials and bacterias and heavy metals and even radiation. And we provide a pure product. We ship this all over the world, and a lot of health institutes, including Hippocrates Institute, offers it to their patients.
Yeah, and speaking of Hippocrates, when I was there doing my health educator program, I was there for 9 weeks, and every day, I believe, they were putting the E3 Life out with their green juice. So we would do, let's see, we did wheatgrass once or twice a day. We would fresh press it ourselves, and then we would drink, let's see, three different green juices throughout the day. And then in one of those servings, they would give us E3 Life. So I mean, clearly they thought it was very foundational type of food as well, too.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So anyway, so I know you wanted to talk about how unhappiness is related to health. And we've had some great discussions off air about how this whole picture relates to each other. I love how you see people as, we're on a mind, body, a spirit, and we have to look at the whole picture. So why don't we dive into that? How does unhappiness relate to our health?
Well, let me give you a definition of unhappiness. The definition for unhappiness is engaging in irrelevant activities. But the definition for happiness is the pursuit of engaging in meaningful activities. So how does this relate, right? So let's say you were born genetically unhealthy, right? So you want to spend time in your life pursuing health. That means that that's beneficial to you, right? It's meaningful to you, because if you can live healthier, not necessarily longer, but healthier in the time that you have, and you can promote that to your family members and to your children and to your grandchildren, that's really a big deal. That's a legacy. And that's what I saw in my family. My mother, it seems like all of my family members had cancer. I mean, my grandfather had cancer, and when did he die? Well, he was 97. And my grandmother didn't have cancer, but she had other issues, and she died at 96. And my mother, who had stage 4 cancer, breast, and metastasized to the brain, my mother really was a symbol of an amazing woman, because not only did she overcome stage 4 cancer without any radiation, without any chemo, without any operations, not only did she overcome that, but she regained a tremendous amount of her health. And as a little kid, I was 8 years old, and my mother was dying. And one of the things that I always heard, and I guess this is the reason why it's one of the main focuses in my life, and it's been a challenge for me as well, is that my mother looked like she was 9 months pregnant. Now, if you can picture, this is a little woman. She was about 5'5", a little Italian woman, and she was about 69 pounds. And I remember I was about 8 years old, and she was green, and her stomach stuck out like she was 9 months pregnant. And I remember a doctor friend telling her that she was in liver failure.
Oh my God.
And that's a big deal, right? And so she did natural therapies, and there were people in health food stores, and at that time, people who really knew how to help people, just like yourself and the things that you're doing and what we've talked about. These people really knew how to use food and herbs and just good, healthy principles to help people overcome really difficult challenges. And I got very excited when I was introduced personally to the E3 Live, because I felt like it was really something that could be part of the arsenal of somebody who is really engaging in meaningful activities, and that one activity would be helping themselves with their health. Because look, if you gain everything, right? Let's say you become very wealthy, or you are wealthy, but you have poor health. I mean, you can't enjoy that wealth, right? So you need the wisdom. I like the healthy, wealthy, wise thing, because that really speaks with, if you have balance in your life, you can really do something.
Yeah, I agree. Health is wealth.
Health is
If
what?
we don't have health, well, I mean, we might not have even our life. And then even if we're alive and we're not healthy, I mean, a lot of people are just coasting by and trying to survive. And that's not a way to live. I mean, I've been there and I didn't have energy. And it's just like you're trying to live during the day and you're trying to work and you're trying to do something meaningful, like you said. And yet it's hard, it's a struggle. And I just really don't feel like that's a good quality of life. My mom used to always say, well, how long do you want to live anyway, when I started jumping into all this health stuff. I was like, look, my dad died at 38 years old, so I was around your age when I was 9, and so my dad died at that age, and so I saw death at a young age. And um, for me, I always wanted to live. And this is kind of, I think, what pushed me in the direction of, one, finding meaning, and two, finding holistic health and finding Jesus, really. So, um, so she would ask me like, well, how long do you want to live anyway? I'm like, it's not necessarily how long I want to live. Like, yeah, I want to live a long night, a long life with people I love and doing stuff I love. But at the same time, I want to live a quality life. I mean, who knows? I could die tomorrow. You never know. But at the same time, I don't want to suffer for many years and not live a life to the fullest. So I'm with you on that.
Yeah. So this really has to do with perspective, right?
Mhm.
Really about perspective and about what's important and where we put our attention.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. So how do you think that our thoughts and attitude affect our brain and our body?
Well, we're a whole being, right? So, um, depending on how you look at life, and this is the way I look at life, is that we're spirit beings and we live in a dirt body, and the way we think about things, the way we see God, and the way we see the world, the way we see others, and really the way we see ourselves, right? All has it affects everything, right? So
Mhm.
because the way we may look at life here in America or in Canada or in Afghanistan, I mean, these are different ways of looking at things, right? Uh, and the way we grow up has something to do with it, and the way that people have spoken to us, and the way people have shown us what relationship is. All of these things really affect our attitude in life. And that really chemically, most people don't know this,
Mhm.
but just think about when you feel stressed, right? So why did you get stressed? Well, you had a thought or something took place that upset you, and that was an interaction.
Mm.
So if you've got thoughts and actions, then you're going to have most of the time reactions.
Mm.
So reactions are not good,
Mhm.
right? Sometimes you've got to react, but you don't want to react all the time, because then you're in fight or flight. And
Yeah.
then chemicals in your body are being distributed constantly. And there's this slow drip that's going on in your body that's affecting um, physical things, mental things.
Mm.
So it affects your mind and your body and your brain in really a ripple effect.
Mhm. Yeah. So I've never heard of someone call it a slow drip. And that, to me, when you say that, I just think about when you go to get an IV injection of like high dose vitamin C or glutathione, if someone's trying to really take it up a notch and work with cancer. And I mean, people do it even just for things like the coronavirus. So a slow drip, that's what it kind of reminds me of, but it's almost like you're doing that, but you're doing the wrong thing. You're having a slow drip just like that, but with like toxins, basically.
Toxins and cortisol.
Oh, there you go. So it's like you're having an IV drip of cortisol when you're stressed.
That's right.
That's unfortunately a really good picture of what that is. I mean, this is why we can't live in that flight or flight mode and be stressed all the time. Obviously, we're in unprecedented times. but we got to figure out ways that we can lower that stress. Do you feel like E3 Live can help with that?
Yes, I do. And I'll tell you how. So, we're making decisions every moment. Right now, we're making decisions and we don't even realize it. I'm making a decision to answer this question in a certain way, right? And we're feeding off of each other in this interview. And we're talking about the things that are meaningful to us. And in the beginning of our conversation, we began to talk about E3 Live and how meaningful it was to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it became very meaningful to me in my life as well. And that's why I spent 20 years promoting it. Look, there's a lot of other things that you could make a lot more money with than trying to convince people to eat algae, right? I mean, it's not, if you're going to take a success course, you're not thinking to yourself, hey, I'm going to go in the algae business. This is kind of a very unique idea. And so, but when you see and you experience the benefits that, literally I've seen tens of thousands of people. I've had people come up to me when I've done lectures or I've been in stores and done trainings and thanking me for bottles that I had sold them or the company or for just being around. And when you hear their stories, and I remember a man told me how his dad was very, very ill, and the only thing that he could eat during this period of time was the algae.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he told me that his dad lived on the algae and he actually recovered.
Wow, that's an incredible story, because when people are sick and their digestive system is not working very well, it can be very difficult to digest foods. And then, there's all this talk about fasting, but fasting can be very difficult for people. I mean, especially if you have things like parasites, the parasites and the candida, they're wanting sugar and they're craving food. So what I found is, as I'm sipping it through on the E3 Live, which I am doing right now, you can't see it in my jar here, or my thing here, but I mean, I literally sip on this all day, and sometimes I'm just going. I'm like, oh shoot, I haven't eaten lunch, but I wasn't necessarily starving. And my husband will tell you that I definitely get my fair share of food. I work out a lot and things like that. So, but to me, that just shows like it's not hard to fast on this, because you're getting all kinds of nutrients that you need in your body. So I'm glad that you told me about that story about this person.
If you can imagine this, I mean, we sell the E3 Live in Whole Foods all over the United States. And I was in a Whole Foods and I was doing an employee training. And I told them, and interestingly enough, where we were doing the training was on the aisle with all the produce.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at all of them and I said to them, there's not one specific produce on this aisle that is really a Whole Foods. And they looked at me like I had 3 heads. And they said, well, what do you mean? These are all Whole Foods. I said, no, they're not. I said, you could never live off of just eating oranges. You could never just live off of eating broccoli. You need all of the essential vitamins and minerals and essential fats.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, but you do carry one product in your store that is really a bona fide whole food.
Mm-hmm.
And what is that? It's the E3 Live.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Isn't it like 50% protein?
It's about 50 to 60% protein by volume. Yes.
Wow.
And it has 65 vitamins and minerals. Mm-hmm. Some minerals that we don't even know that exist. Believe it or not.
Wow.
What they are, right?
There's gonna be new scientific studies with that probably, huh?
Yeah. So we're as time rolls on, we're going to understand things a lot better in how we process things. in our bodies. So is it possible to use E3 Live in conjunction with a good attitude, a better way of looking at things? Yeah, absolutely. You're not gonna want to drink algae unless you're serious about doing something really healthy for yourself, because you're starting to see that if I care about myself and I do things that are good for me, then I'm going to have a better outcome in life and a better attitude, right?
Yeah.
And a better attitude gives me the ability to be more successful. And that's what we want, right? We want to be successful at everything we do.
Yeah. Well, I always think about it like this. It's like the chicken or the egg situation, like which comes first? I mean, do our thoughts affect our body first, or does our body affect our thoughts? And it kind of seems like it's both. Like, you know, our physical chemistry can make us happy or sad, but what we feed our mind daily with what we're watching on TV or who we're associating with, or what we're reading or whatnot, how we're speaking to ourselves, can really affect our body's chemistry as well. So E3 Live is incredible at how, like, we're balancing the body's chemistry more by getting the nutrients that we need and high doses of it. And then also the effect on the brain. I mean, can you dissect that even more?
Well, the interesting part about the algae, and I'll just give you a little quick history, is that the algae is very unique. It's what I would call intelligent, and it's a single cell organism. Now, humans have cells, right? So we're cellular beings, and we are electrically charged, just like the algae is electrically charged. And that's why it works so well, is because we have a relationship to it, because our body systems understand the intelligence of cells, because we're made up of them. So that's very exciting, right? And so that, and on top of that, we have the ability to easily process the nutrients in our bodies. Now, I personally have drank a bottle a day for a long period of time. In fact, I just did a fast of a bottle a day for about a month.
Wow.
And I could tell dynamic differences in my my chemistry. Just,
So you weren't eating or drinking anything else?
no, I was, but you know, a vegan diet. But you don't have to be, right? The thing about it is, and I wouldn't go out and start doing a bottle a day, right? It might be tempting, and you might you might
Have a Herxheimer.
yeah, but you know, your body is going to begin to spill toxin, because our bodies are very toxic. We don't know it. We don't realize it. But we live in a very toxic society. Our thoughts produce toxicity. If you think about a person who, let's say, is constipated, okay, that person who's constipated is tight. They're not releasing stuff. Okay, so there's a relationship to stiffness. There's a relationship to fear. When you're fearful, you clench yourself, right? Well, your inner parts clench as well. They don't want to release. And so when you're fearful, and when you're tense, and when you're angry, and when you're bitter, you don't want to release. You don't want to be friendly. You want to keep to yourself. You're like, keep your distance. Well, it has a relationship to physically what's going on. One thing about the E3 Live, since we're really talking about it, is that it boosts serotonin levels. And serotonin, as you know, is a happy love drug, if you will.
Yeah.
And it makes you feel good.
And sleep.
And sleep, right, because it helps with melatonin. So when you get good sleep, when you're moving toxins out of the body, And when you're boosting serotonin, you've really got a great combination, and you're on your way in a physical way to restoration.
Yeah.
While you're
Well,
working
and your brain health, as we were talking about. So all of that is a recipe for success with better functioning brain, and that which leads to a better functioning mood. And so, okay, so it helps with serotonin. What about the other neurotransmitters?
It does. And that's because it's a complete food. It has all of the amino acids. So one of the things that I like talking about is the liver, because it's really the control mechanism, or the levers of and gears of your body. And the liver is one of the functions of the liver is filtering your blood. Okay, so it filters your blood so that you are moving out the toxicity in the body. A lot of people, even young people, who eat a very unhealthy diet, fast food, so on and so forth, they are developing what's called fatty liver. And just people from 25 years ago till now, the diet has changed so dramatically. And really, people are not educated to understand that you can't just put anything in this machine and that the gears are going to turn properly, right? I mean, it's just like your car. I mean, if you don't keep up with your car and you don't put in the right oil and have water and all of the things that are necessary and change the filters, like your liver, you will eventually, your car will stop. And that's really what people are headed toward. And they just don't understand that if you take in all of this chemical composition or all of these fake foods, you're really setting yourself up for a lot of problems.
Yeah. I'm all about that liver too, and this is why I always recommend doing enemas. And you were talking to me off air about the liver flushes. So tell me about your story with liver flushes.
Wow. So years ago, I was in a health food store and I was doing a demo for the E3 Live product. And it's the only gift that I ever received from anybody. And this woman came up to me and she said to me, "I'm going to give you this book as a gift." And I said, "Well, thank you." She said, "You will need this book sometime in your life." And it's amazing because she was exactly correct. I began to have some problems with my liver and my gallbladder.
Wow.
And serious problems. And I began to do the liver gallbladder cleanse. And that began a process of really changing my life.
Wow.
Because the liver and the gallbladder really affect your brain. They affect your emotions. Because if you're not eliminating toxin out of the body and it's building up, right, it's staying in. And you have multiple ways of detoxing because your body was created in such a way that it's a big filter. And you've got to work to get this junk out of your filters, right? So that you can really breathe, so your body can breathe, so your mind can breathe, and so you can think clearly and not be reactionary, but you want to be responsive. And responsive is like being responsible.
So when you say you got to get the junk out to so the body can breathe, I think that that's another beautiful picture of what it is. So when I would do blood analysis and I would see people that were very toxic, you could tell that their cells are not oxygenating enough with certain signs in the blood. And so that's literally what the toxins and the infections are doing. They're robbing the body of oxygen. And so when you say that you have to get the junk out so the body can breathe, I mean, it's literal. Like, it's literal so that the body can absorb all its oxygen so it can breathe. Otherwise, you can't get all the oxygen you need.
That's right. That's exactly right. And I think that because we live in such an instant society, the health food stores that are around today, for the most part, aren't like the original health food stores. The people that ran health food stores in the 70s and the 60s, even back in the 50s, there were health food stores. Paul Bragg, for instance, which is the originator of the apple cider vinegar that everyone is using these days. I mean, he was the first person to ever have a health food store.
Wow.
And so what in the world was a health food store? It was the alternative. But these people to the foods that people were eating, right? And, what was wrong with the food that everybody was eating was that it was slowly collecting in the body and not being eliminated. I mean, I can tell you some things right now, such as, did you know that there is rice that's being produced that's really not rice? It's plastic.
Oh my God, that just makes me sick hearing that. That's unbelievable.
Yes. So, and these things are approved.
Do you
Yeah.
know these brands?
Well, you can watch videos on YouTube about how they make it. And have you ever heard of meat glue?
I don't think so.
Okay, so meat glue is actually a glue that's approved that they piece together meat to make it look like it's one piece. So there's all these scraps of meat, and they bring it together and they make a steak out of it, and you can't tell the difference.
Oh my gosh. Now I have a whole new research project, Perry.
Yeah, so
Oh my gosh, I
there's
had no
all
idea about
these,
meat glue.
yes, there's all these kinds of things. And if you don't know and you don't understand what's going on, you need to educate yourself. Because
Right.
every time that you put this into your body, it's blocking. It's
Mhm.
blocking your channels. And you can't block the channels because you need to eliminate to live.
Right, right. Well, yeah, and that's why people get that big stomach. You were talking about your mom had a big stomach, right? Even though she was 67 or 9 pounds.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
liver was so backed up and so toxic. And you see, because we live in this like fast food society and we want it now and we got to have it now and everything is instant, and we order and we get it done and we drive and in 5 minutes we have it. We think that health is like that. We think that even achieving good health, we just do a cleanse and that's the end of it. And we've helped ourselves. Well, it's the beginning.
Yeah.
But you're only at the beginning, because if you have been putting in poison in your body for 25 years, you have 25 years worth of poison that needs to be expelled. And you cannot eliminate that poison all at once,
Right, right.
because you can go into toxic shock.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it's a process. Life is really a process, one way or another.
Mhm. Yeah, so that ties back to our belief system. And can you talk about how that relates to our health too?
Wow. Well, belief systems, they're established on the basis of what we deem as most important. right? Whatever we put our focus on.
Mm-hmm.
So if we think that as long as we look good, then we're healthy.
Mm-hmm.
That's not correct. If we chase the things in this world that everybody else has, and that means that we're going to be happy because we have what they have and they appear to be happy, then is that really happiness? No. And that's the reason why when we get a lot of things, we still are in this empty bubble, right? Because that's not where happiness is. It's being involved in meaningful things. It's about understanding who you really are as a person and fulfilling that purpose in your life. And part of that purpose really is about helping others, like we're doing today. I mean, you just can't make this stuff up, you know. And we've had other conversations, and those conversations were really good. And what were they about? They were about helping other people, right? Because both of us have this same kind of idea, because we realize that we can't do this thing alone. And if you believe that you do it alone, then you've missed it completely.
Yeah. So not doing it alone is something to highlight too. When someone's on their healing journey, I mean, it's really difficult to do it alone. If you are, like you said, 25 years backed up in toxins and never did a detox before and ate fast food and didn't really live a good lifestyle, we're not here to condemn anyone, but at the same time, you just got to realize that it's not a quick fix. And a lot of times people do need support. One, we have God. That's the biggest one, I think. And two, there's sometimes people need other people to walk them along the journey and help guide them, and also be a resource if you feel like, you know, you're being discouraged in your program too, because it isn't easy. And so it goes back to that belief system of, like, what do you believe? Like, do you even believe you can be healthy? I mean, a lot of people don't even believe that. Like, we're fed all these lies that, you know, or you got certain type of illness and you're just going to die soon, you know?
Right.
And
Well, I think that it also goes back to believing something about yourself, right? So if you believe that you're not valuable, if you've been told that, well, I had a friend who told me, he said, my father told me that I should go under the house and die. And that's amazing. And he told me that when he was a kid, that his father repeatedly tried to kill him. And wow, what a thing to have to live through and overcome in your life. And I spent years trying to encourage this person that the perspective of what he was told, how he was bullied, how he was torn down. Maybe people in the audience who are listening today or watching today think that's me. And I've got to tell you that I was bullied throughout my whole childhood. You know, I was a small young kid and didn't have a lot of meat on me. And through high school, through grammar school, I mean, the police had to take me to school.
wow.
Virtually. Yeah, it was pretty serious. And so it took me a long time to think that people could even see anything good in me. And I could never understand why people saw me that way. I just didn't understand it. I didn't understand. I wasn't, at least I didn't think I was like that. You know, there may have been some things that I was doing, but I didn't know why that was, right? And so, but then when you believe that stuff about yourself, then you don't value yourself.
Yeah.
And you don't see yourself as valuable. And if you don't see yourself as valuable, you're not going to do good things for yourself. You're going to harm yourself. It's a strange thing, but that's what we do.
Right.
And then on top of all of those feelings and all of those emotions and the things we perpetuate in our life and our sedentary lifestyle and our poor choices and our poor relationships and all of these things that because we want to be accepted by other people. And lots of disappointments, right?
Yeah.
So all that stuff is affecting how we believe about things.
Right.
And it isn't until we start to have breakthroughs that things change.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking
about. I totally believe it. I mean, I think whatever someone's open to doing, whether it is taking something like E3 Live or opening a motivational book or the Bible or feeding their spirit with good things, I'm like, do it, because it will probably open up to the next thing and then the next thing. And then you realize that you're in this whole different place and you're transformed. There's a lot of things that come to the table when people are trying to recover from illness, and it's never usually just one thing. I mean, that's a huge trauma that you probably went through. And I'm just curious, and I'm sure the rest of the audience is curious, like, how did you overcome that? Because you seem like a very confident person at this day and age.
I specifically, it took me really a lot of years and putting myself around people who really did care about me. And that made me feel really uncomfortable, to be honest with you. I cut off the relationships in my life that were toxic. That was one of the things that I did. Another thing that I did is I began to put in I began to put in the Torah into my life. I began to put in the Bible. In fact, I was not a good reader. I didn't grow up because the fact that I was bullied and didn't want to go to school affected my academic levels. And so for many years, I had like a 3rd and 4th grade level reading and understanding things.
Wow.
Yeah. And so as I began to put good things into my life and as I began to make changes and working with physical things, now I had my mother, because my mother showed me something, and that was unlimited possibility, right? So maybe there are people in the audience today that didn't have that person. Or maybe you do have that person. But right now, we're that person for all those other people that are listening right now, right? Because it's real. I mean, I'm not making this stuff up. It's the real deal. I could never think of all the things I can tell you about this journey. It's really quite incredible. But when you begin to realize, and it takes a little while because perspective really holds you hostage. Belief systems hold you hostage to say there's something outside of what I've been told. There's something outside of what everybody else is doing and what they're thinking about and what they're acting like. There's something living. There's something, I want to live and I don't want to die, and I want to accomplish something wonderful, and I want to leave a legacy in this world to help other people so that they don't have to suffer in the ways my mother suffered or my grandfather suffered or the way I have suffered, right? And people like you, a young person that's very intelligent, who has the world before her to be a leader, to help other people. This is tremendous. This is exciting. This gives people hope. And so I hope there's lots of people listening today, because this is really, really super important. More than products, right? Is the idea that you really do have a purpose in life, and that you really can do something amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't stress enough how that's so important too. And I'm glad that you're really encouraging people. If they don't know what their purpose is, then find it, you know? And if you're in the middle of a trial right now, a lot of times our trial becomes our testimony, and that becomes our purpose, a part of our purpose. And we want to help people that were in that trial. It's kind of weird how that happens, and unfortunate almost how we have to go through some crazy thing and then now it's the reason why we're living. But just think about that. There's a trial there's a purpose in the trial, and there's a reason, there's something that you're supposed to learn that is going to help you help other people, and there's so much joy that comes out of that.
Yes.
So I would use that as your hope, and know that this is not in vain, whatever you're going through, whether it's a health issue, a financial issue, a relationship issue, that there's something that you're supposed to learn from that. And when we have that purpose in mind, then there's a reason why we take things like E3 Live. You know what I mean? There's a reason why we drink bottles of E3 Live every day, which, by the way, me and my husband are pretty much doing. We're sharing one. He gets most of it. I get a little bit of it. So, I mean, there's a reason why we do it. It's not just to drink algae every day. It's because we want to feel good, and now we have something greater that we're working for. So I'm glad that we touched on that. So, to tie this back to food, how much of feeling like your self-worth, like how much do you feel like eating the right foods helped you have better self-worth as well, and a better self-perception of yourself?
Yeah, so that's really an excellent question. And I think that there's this sort of symbiotic relationship that goes on, right? So you're making better choices for yourself. Well, why are you making better choices? Because you have a better outlook, and because you've taken the time to care enough about yourself to learn. And so it's kind of like what I was going to say a little earlier, and that was we want to do this one cleanse, or we want to do this one thing, and that's it, right? And that is not it. That's the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
That's the baby steps at taking care of yourself. So this relationship with, your spirit and your mind and your body, and this connection that's taking place here, really has to go both ways.
Mm-hmm.
You're working from one angle to another angle. One of the things that I noticed, for instance, I have periodic massages, and the masseuse that works on me just puts me really in a very peaceful place. And I have noticed that when they work on certain muscles, certain thoughts come. It's really quite an amazing thing. I don't know if you have ever experienced this, but it's almost like the negative things in our lives lodge themselves in our body, in the muscles.
Mm-hmm.
When the person begins to work on that area and release it, the thought comes back to what happens, and you get to work it out while the muscle's being worked out. It's really tremendous.
It's true. It's true. And it's interesting that you're saying that. I've been watching this show recently, and this lady had gone through a traumatic experience where her husband was killed. And so, I mean, the whole story was around this, and there was a huge mess around it too. And she ends up meeting this guy who was a chiropractor, and he did some work on her. And I mean, all those emotions and everything started coming up, and she was literally crying while he was doing this. And she released all the trauma that she was carrying. So there is a physical effect on our body, and that's why body work, structural, I always talk about the chemical component that throws us off of homeostasis, whether it's toxins and infections or it's deficiencies. But I always like to add that third category, and that structural component that makes a difference too. That's definitely not my expertise, aside from personal training, which I guess I can definitely help with that when you're stretching and you're getting strong and making sure you're exercising correctly. But there is.
You might want to put a label on that little area we just talked about as trauma.
Trauma, yeah. Yeah. So have you actually seen the E3 Live help people with trauma?
Well,
I know it's kind of hard to say because there's always so many components to deal with when you're dealing with trauma, but sometimes they're profound experiences.
I think that the crowning act, if you will, of E3 Live is the ability to help people feel happier.
That just feels good saying that or hearing that.
I mean, that's and it has to do with the title of our show. And right now there are a lot of people during this whole COVID thing, which I'm not going to spend really any time on, except to just mention that there are a lot of people that didn't expect something like this to ever happen. They never thought of it, that this could ever happen, right? Yeah. And it brings people into a space of being grounded once again. I mean, this is one of the ways that I'm looking at it, right? Because I'm spending more time with my family than I ever have.
Yeah.
So it grounds you in all kinds of ways because you have to deal with realities that you normally would not have to deal with. And because in our normal life, we were moving forward pretty well, most of us. And these changes have altered people in many, many ways.
Yeah. So because it has all the amino acids, it's building those different neurotransmitters in the brain, which is why one is serotonin, which makes us happier. We have things like dopamine that make us have more focus and memory. We have GABA that helps calm us down and relax. Epinephrine, I mean, that's also, people can feel a lot of pain emotionally if they don't have enough of that. Also, E3 Life has a lot of essential fatty acids, which are also key components to the brain too. About how much is essential fatty acids?
3 and 6. Now, because it is a wild-crafted food, the amount of nutrients fluctuates. So depending on the season, the harvest, it could have more fatty acids, or it could have more chlorophyll, or it could have more of the phycocyanin, the blue pigment. It just really, really depends on really the ecosystem and what it's producing.
That's so interesting.
So we're really subject to that ecosystem. And the reason why I brought up the whole COVID thing is E3 Live would be a great help to people rather than drinking coffee all day long. Because these kind of areas, these kind of situations cause people to indulge further in trying to kill the pain.
Yeah. So, okay, so it's good for helping emotions in that way. And then what about viruses?
Well, it definitely boosts the immune system. Really, that's all I can say about viruses. I mean, there's no real clinical studies that have been done, and the whole virus thing and what's going on with claims. One of the things we especially don't do is make claims. Because we are regulated by the FDA, we are regulated by the USDA, and really, we're an agricultural product, which is really quite different. Our agriculture is in a bottle. That's the only difference between your broccoli on the shelf at your natural market. So it's subject to nature.
Well, so let's put it this way. Zinc and vitamin D, vitamin A, those are some of the ones that people are talking about a lot with viruses, and how they can help. I would assume there's probably tons of those nutrients in E3 Live, huh?
You can find a lot more minerals.
Mm-hmm.
As far as vitamin D, I do not believe that we've tested for that.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I definitely know it's mineral rich, and if people have heavy metal or chemical toxicities, it's good for eliminating those as well too, right?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Nice.
Um, and it, and it helps very much with the liver because it's a bitter.
Okay. That's why I like this. It just hit me right now. I had told you off air that I had done so many liver flushes
Yeah,
because I just kept passing stones at some point in my life, and I was like, I got to get this out. So I was very determined for a year and a half with those, and now I've been hooked on this E3 Live, and it makes sense. I need to support my liver. So I did not realize I was supporting my liver while I was doing this. Why
and
why is it so much supporting the liver?
what's that? I'm
Why
sorry,
is it so much supporting the liver? Oh, you said because it's a bitter, right?
because it's a bitter. That's right.
It doesn't really taste bitter. It makes
Very
sense.
digestible.
Yeah.
So 97% used by the body.
Wow. Yeah.
Really incredible if you think about that.
Yeah,
Because
so if people look at like protein content, for example, it says it's high in protein, but it might not be as many grams as something like a meat, but you're getting it in a very digestible form that, I mean, it literally just goes in your veins, and that's why you feel so magical when you drink it.
yeah, I would say that in order for it to, I would say that if you're not eating any other protein, you should eat some other protein. But the idea of protein, I think the way we view protein today is, how can I say, we utilize way too much for our bodies to process,
Yeah.
and that brings about impairment.
Mhm.
And so we need very digestible and usable protein,
Mhm.
and not in abundance where the body really has to work very hard.
Yeah. Well, and infections and that in our gut, they lower the stomach acid, so we're not able to break down our protein that well until we really do a deep cleaning of that area.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
So an impaired liver can disrupt brain function. It
Mhm.
can affect your mood swings. It could help um, encourage depression, emotional breakdowns.
Mhm.
When you consume a lot of sugar, that becomes toxic in the body and affects your organs. So then, of course, your organs are breaking down.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of cause and effect going on, and sugar is sort of the enemy of the
Oh
liver,
gosh, right.
and it impairs it. And when your liver isn't functioning the way it should function, then it doesn't filter the blood like it should, and those toxins stay in your body, and that's where you begin to have problems.
Yeah. Yeah. So the last thing I want to ask you before we wrap this up is why do you think that wheatgrass is better than, I mean, sorry, E3 Live is better than wheatgrass and spirulina?
So that's a really good question, and part of that I answered before, in that as far as wheatgrass is concerned, um, so what can we learn from plants, right? So plants that grow in soil first are only as good as the seed and the soil,
Mhm.
right? So it's like a multi-generational thing, right? It's like the DNA.
Mhm.
So the seed came from a plant that grew in soil, and the soil was poor, and so now you have core nutrition built within the seed, and even though it gets green, doesn't really mean that it's filled with nutrients. Make sense?
Yeah.
So, okay, you might have a lot of chlorophyll. Like, for instance, with wheatgrass, you got about 135 milligrams of chlorophyll. You have 300 milligrams of chlorophyll with the aphanizomenon, the E3 Live. So, but if you were to compare the amount of minerals that are in the wheatgrass, and even though the wheatgrass is fresh, and you can get it at your local juice bar when they're open, does it have the amount of minerals that are in the algae? And the answer is no, it does not.
Wait, even if it's grown, if it's a good seed and it has good soil, you still don't think it compares?
It doesn't compare because the algae has never been devoid of nutrients.
Huh.
Okay,
So it's
so
always repopulating from a good source.
absolutely.
Okay. All right. I get where you're going now.
Yes.
So what about
So
spirulina then?
spirulina is the same. Now, spirulina is much better, but it's subject to the vitamins and minerals that the farmer, the spirulina farmer, puts in the water for it to grow from.
Oh.
And the type of fertilizer, in effect, that's used to grow it. So spirulina is a great food. I use it almost every day because it has certain properties that I really like. It's high in carotenoids. So I add that.
Is that what Blue Magic is, that supplement that you guys have?
So yeah, so Blue Magic is an extract of the spirulina.
So why is it blue?
Okay, so the blue is, so this is very interesting. So there are different color pigments that are a part of the algae. And if you've ever taken the algae, do an experiment. Maybe you haven't done it. Take a glass, pour some algae into the glass, add water to it, fill the glass up, and leave it just sit in the sunlight. And what you're going to notice is that there's going to be a separation that takes place. You're going to see blue, you're going to see green, and you're going to see red. Red's the carotenoids. The blue is the phycocyanin, or the cyanin color, blue. And that phycocyanin is your anti-inflammatory properties of the algae. In spirulina, the anti-inflammatory properties are a lot higher. So that's why the blue is derived from spirulina. But it's also in the E3 Live, but not as much.
Okay. So it's better of an anti-inflammatory for that, the blue spirulina though, over the green.
Yes. Well, it's the whole thing in the green, right? It's all there. But if you're really trying to focus on anti-inflammatory, then then you get the Blue Magic from us.
Okay. Okay. So it's good to have a mixture of the AFA, aphanizomenon, let me see if I can say it, aphanizomenon fluosequa.
Very good.
I really practiced that one day.
Nice.
It's like, I'm going to say this. I'm going to figure it out. So it's good to have a mixture of that and the spirulina.
Absolutely. Okay. You
Okay.
can take a nice spoonful and you could even add it to the algae.
But you don't get that, you can't get that liquid though.
You can't get that liquid, no.
Okay, so that's where E3 Live is a little bit better in that way too, because it's more of a living type of food. That's
right. And so always liquid is going to be much more digestible and going to go right in and absorb right into your cellular membrane.
Okay, perfect.
And of course, it contains the living water, right?
Yeah.
So That's a big deal.
Yeah, that
Because
makes
all
sense.
of these other things have been dried.
Hmm. Yeah, water is a whole nother podcast I need to do at some point, and where it's structured and it's coming from plants like that. And I mean, there's so many things that we could talk about, even with something that a lot of us take for granted. It's just that we need to hydrate ourselves, but we're not realizing that there's certain things that make the water more hydratable and better
Yeah,
for us too.
absolutely. One other thing that I'd like to mention
Yeah.
is for those people who have digestive issues, hormonal imbalances, look to the liver. There's
Mm-hmm.
the mechanism that why you're having the difficulty. If you have had your gallbladder removed, you need to use enzymes. You need to use um, pancreatic enzymes. Do some research about enzymes.
Yeah.
This will help you tremendously.
Yeah, totally. Especially lipase. If people don't have a gallbladder, they can't really break down their fat too well when that's a situation. And then you want to talk about hormone challenges. They can't build their hormones if they can't break down their fat.
Right?
So, but at least the E3 Live, if they're drinking that too, they're getting that bitter component that can help stimulate that bile flow. So
Yes.
it's a good thing to have in conjunction, obviously, with the enzymes.
Yeah. So, do we have a few minutes? I just wanted to give some point by point things that people can do to help their liver.
Yeah, let's do that, and then we'll sum it up. We'll tell them the free gift that they're probably dying
Yeah.
to hear about now that
Yeah.
they know that there's a free gift.
Great. So, removing toxic root causes, right? So, one would be bitterness, unforgiveness, fear, stress. Work on the addictions. As you put in better things in your body, you can start removing those things that you're substituting, real life for, because there's so much pain in the way, right?
Hmm.
And so sugar and junk food, alcohol, drugs, those kind of things, caffeine in excess, um, things like food allergies, things that if you didn't really take care of your teeth and there's infections in your mouth, those kind of things are secreting toxins into your liver, not helping you. Do a gallbladder cleanse, gallbladder liver cleanse. Get involved in learning about what you can do for your gallbladder and liver. Some of the herbs that you can use and some of the foods that would be very, very helpful would be milk thistle,
Hmm.
dandelion root, which helps stimulate bile, by the way, and also beetroot, which is very effective with glutathione and helps gut repair. So one of the things we do is we juice a bunch of beets, and then we put them in ice cube trays, and we take a cube out and we add it to our juice or to our smoothie.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Another thing would be cruciferous vegetables, broccoli, bitter leaf greens. Of course, that's going to bring high fiber to your diet. Very important.
Hmm.
We talked about coffee enemas.
Hmm.
That might be a new thought for some people. Do a little research about that. Enzymes. We talked about pancreatic enzymes and also the fact E3 Live has a great digestible enzyme.
That's good to know.
Deep breathing. Breathing from beneath your ribs. Doing maybe a couple of sets of that a day. That's going to help your liver. And of course, we talked about E3 Live being a bitter.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Perry, for sharing that. Thank you for summing it up with all those points. And I know that this is going to benefit people in so many ways to be able to implement some of those things in your life. So I know that might sound a lot for some of you guys, but just whatever stuck out to you the most, I would take that and just start running with it. And then when you feel like you can chip away at the next thing, then chip away at the next thing. And that's how we move a mountain and help change our habits and become, new creatures really as we're trying to heal our body. So thanks again. And we have, so there's a gift that we have. If you buy 6 E3 Live BrainON, the apple lemon flavor or the regular flavor, you're going to get 1 free. And there's going to be a link on the bottom, the show notes. And so you're also going to get this really cool book. Can you explain that?
Yeah, so it's a book that was published with, it's called the Elders Speak book. It's health and living foods experts talk about, and one of those experts is Brian Clement that you've studied with. And there's really about 200 years of combined experience. It's about 37 pages or so of just pure interviews on all kinds of subjects, brain and body and spiritual, and it's just, in fact, it says discover the keys to vibrant health, longevity, and I didn't plan this, happiness.
Oh, what a great way to end this. Can you show it again real quick so we can see it? So Our Elders Speak, and it's by Brian Clement and Gabriel Cousins, you said? I can't see the bottom.
Yep, Gabriel Cousins.
There you go. Victorious Klavinska, I cannot say his last name.
Yep.
Yeah. He was there too when I studied at Hippocrates, so I got to meet him.
Excellent.
Yeah, so that's you want to talk about people that are pioneering health. So I highly recommend taking advantage of that. It's going to be to the end of June, so now until the end of June 30th, 2020. If you're listening to this during that time, or if you get 6 E3 Live BrainON, either the regular or the apple lemon flavor, which I love the flavor one personally, you'll get 1 bottle for free, and then you'll get that book, which is about a $63 value for those free gifts. So you'll just have to put in the promo code Wellness Trinity. So it's like the name of my business or podcast without the. So Wellness Trinity, and then you'll be able to get those free gifts. So Perry, is there any way that people can find you if they want to reach out and ask any more questions?
Absolutely. It's Perry, Perry, at e3live.com.
Okay, perfect.
Happy to answer any questions that I can.
Awesome. So you have been such a great resource here, and I'm just so blessed again that we had you on, and you're able to share your story and your passion for E3 Live and the the nuts and bolts about it and nitty gritty. And I love this product. I just can't stress that enough, how I just really feel like it's foundational food. The other things are great, and I still think have your salads and cruciferous vegetables and other herbs, just like Perry mentioned, but try to make this as a staple in your diet too. Even if you only do a little bit every day, over time it's going to accumulate in the benefits that it's having on your health. So thank you again, Perry, for joining us, and thank you listeners for watching, and we will join in again next week. My Super Immunity Boost Juice Guide is now available on thewellnesstrinity.com. You'll learn how to grow broccoli microgreens, the ingredients I put in my green juice, and super nutritious supplements you can add to enhance your immune system. Again, go to thewellnesstrinity.com and you'll receive your free Super Immunity Boost Juice Guide.
Thank you for listening to the Wellness Trinity podcast. Be sure to subscribe for more wellness tips to help you achieve optimal health. Don't forget to rate and review so we can continue to bring you the best content. See you on the next episode.